probably the case. And what makes it interesting is, for all their talk about the threat from the right-wing white population, the demographics of lawful firearm ownership is quite diverse. It's unlike affirmative action BE policy. This is not a planned diversification. This is something that just actually organically happened, and it was the case for a long time. So now you have to also ask, okay, which demographic are you afraid of? One specific one or all of them? Because you are trying to actually disarm bloody everybody, which creates the following problem. Only about 50% of all firearms in South Africa are licensed. The other 50%, this comes from the Global Small Arms Survey. They did a whole big study on the number of estimated firearms in countries worldwide, where they looked at the number of registered firearms and they estimate the number of unregistered or in illicit circulation. And they pinged South Africa between about 2.5 to 3 million illicitly owned unregistered firearms. And there were other studies that pinged it higher at about 6 million, but I'm going to go with about 3. And we only have 3 million registered. So only 50% of the guns in this country voluntarily submit to the Firearms Control Act of 2000. The other 50% of gun owners couldn't care less because they're all owning the stuff illegally. So the horns of the dilemma here is you're going, right, with the implications of this bill, you're looking at 3 million gun owners, potentially trying to criminalize them when you've got a pool of 3 million that are already criminalized that you're doing nothing for. And the big bugbear, the big boogeyman that they scare the public with is they say, okay, but there's about 7,000 guns that are stolen from private individuals and institutions every year, and this is feeding into the illegal pool. It's like, okay, let's put an asterisk next to that because that's not entirely accurate. Firstly, private sources is not just mom and dad or you and I with our self-defense guns or sport shooting guns. By the way, that would be a very bad source for criminals because you have to rob
A lot of people.
thousands of individual households in the hope of you getting a hold of a gun, and there's only about 4.5.
So where do you go?
Well, that's where you go. You go to the state armories.
Mm-hmm.
Or you go to parastatals. So now the problem is, right, you've got security companies that own guns and they might lose them in the course of performing their duties as policemen are also robbed of theirs. So you can't get too angry about that.
Yeah.
But then you have about 2.2 million state guns, of which not the majority are owned by the SAPs. You have ESCOM, PRASA, various other parastatals that have their own internal security divisions and their own firearms license under Section 20 of the Act that are counted as private gun owners. And Jenny Irish of the Institute of Security Studies, before her untimely passing, I think it was earlier this year or late last year, she did a bombshell report on there's 2.2 million guns in the South African government's possession, and only the SAPs report on where it is. And none of the other institutions that she requested data from could tell her where the guns were, how many they still had, and who were in possession of them. So there's about 2.2 million state-owned firearms out there that we don't know the status of, which not enough people are expressing concern about.
And the government at the same time is saying, you give me your guns, you can't defend yourself with your gun. Oh, by the way, I have no clue where 2.2 million of mine are.
That's exactly that. And then they say, well, you guys lose 7,000 guns a year, which we don't, but let's pretend we do. Let's go with that. It's like, okay, up until about 2018, the SAPS recovery rates of firearms reported stolen every year was close to 90%, meaning there's no real leakage into the existing illicit pool, very small. But let's say it's a full 7,000 a year, and there's a recovery rate of 0. That represents 0.2% of the lower end estimate of what's already in illegal circulation. It's not even a drop in the ocean. And now you have these great stories from the, well, not a story, it's a factual report from the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime that details you have corrupt Namibian policemen running this great racket where they're taking Nampol, Namibian police pistols that have been decommissioned. They're not decommissioned, fully automatic AK-47s and Uzis, and they're smuggling them directly to Cape Flat gangs over the border in flower trucks and stuff like that. And you go, and sure, that probably doesn't represent a massive flow in and of itself, but how many cross-border flows do we have?
Yeah.
And I've yet to see footage of a Zama Zama without them holding an AK. So there's clearly no shortage of these things. And it comes to the point where we have in South Africa a massive organized criminal industry. I'm going to call it an industrial sector because it's pervasive and it's everything. You can't sell fruit or veg next to the street in a township without paying an extortion mafia off or they kill you. You can't go in a television set in a township without paying somebody off or else they make an example out of you. We have taxi mafias and taxi warfare up the yin yang. We have the normal Cape Flat gangs.
Yeah.
We have illegal mining cartels and syndicates. Any activity under the sun has its illegal, violent counterpart in the underworld. And all of that violence needs tools and implements for which to perpetrate
Sure.
it. So there is a demand for firearms because we have an out of control criminal industry that is, according to the Madlanga Commission, connected to the higher echelons of political power in South Africa.
So your bad guys are armed, and there are a lot of bad guys.
To the teeth.
And the government's answer is the good guys can't have guns. And there seems to be an intensified push for that.